Hi, folks, and welcome to today's Security Info Watch webinar series, where we'll be discussing cybersecurity to the edge for smart building infrastructure. I'd like to thank our supporters and our sponsors for this webinar today, Arrow, KMC Controls, and Veridify Security for helping us bring this event to you. Cloud connectivity, smarter control devices, and high-performance networks are making buildings smarter and more efficient. From climate and lighting controls, sensors, and building access to operational elements like elevators, all components of buildings are now interconnected. To keep buildings safe and secure, it's critical to provide cybersecurity protection to building management systems. Today, our panel will feature an in-depth discussion related to a solution powered by KMC Commander IoT Gateway and Veridify's Dome Sentry, its device ownership management and enrollment software that can provide a network edge holistic solution stakeholders expect. It's a security offering that protects not just the network, but also the devices in the building from threats. Hi, I'm Steve Lasky. I'm the editorial director for SecurityInfoWatch.com and our print magazines, Security Business, Security Technology Executive, and Locksmith Ledger Internationals. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, which again is sponsored by Arrow, KMC Controls, and Veridify Security. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and kick off the event. Tim, you're on the podium.
Thank you so much, everyone. Privileged to be here, and I appreciate everyone's time. I thought I would start off this conversation talking about smart buildings by trying to put together some categories to help us get an idea of what we're talking about and how we frame these kinds of conversations, because I recognize that smart buildings is one of those kind of nebulous buzz terms that isn't always helpful to just throw out there. So the way I like to look at smart buildings is to break it into these four categories, starting with a standard building. This is going to be a building that has a building automation system already deployed. It could be of any type of legacy system. But then we have an open protocol. It's communicating systems. There are sensors in the individual zones or spaces, which could range from things like temperature and humidity, perhaps a few more like occupancy. And then you've had some optimized schedules for occupancy. The next thing around that also is there's likely some kind of remote serviceability. So that remote serviceability is looking at either a VPN or a team viewer into the system. And then from there, you can start to build out multiple different new things to build into your smart buildings. The way I've categorized it here is kind of a more traditional and standard way of increasing or adding new types of things into your building. So whether now you're looking at CO2 and occupancy or airflow measurement, access control, security, all of those are things that kind of start to build off of that standard building already. Likewise, as you continue to add more things, now you're looking at intelligent buildings, cloud-based platforms, and aggregation, the more convergence of IT and OT in that space. Now you're looking at data. You have data coming out of your building, and now you're doing something with it, with fault detection, diagnostics, root cause analysis, etc. Maybe you're looking at energy management, you're setting some ESG goals and looking at that, or you're looking more specifically around indoor air quality and IoT sensors. And then lastly, you have what we would call a genius building. At KMC, we call ourselves the building geniuses. And so a genius building is now going to begin including things artificial intelligence, advanced cybersecurity, like Veridify that we'll be talking about today, advanced data aggregation and further integration with other prop tech systems, and then also things like 3D digital twin, which is an upcoming technology that's really expanding quickly. Now, to have a genius building or to have an intelligent building, you don't necessarily need to have everything throughout this range. Perhaps you pick and choose from each of those because, frankly, not everything necessarily needs security or facility management built into it. But you do want fault detection or that advanced cybersecurity with Veridify. But today we will be talking specifically around the components of cloud-based platform and aggregation and IT and OT convergence, along with things like cybersecurity and in-depth data aggregation and integration. One of the big things about adding this new smart building technology is, what's in it for me? What's really going to be the value to my customers or my end users? Or if I'm a building owner, how is this going to help me? And these 9 things here are really driving the technologies that we develop and how we deploy them. So first and foremost, it's labor efficiencies. If I have data in my building, before I send a team or roll a truck, I know exactly what's going on, what's going wrong, and what needs to be fixed. And that's going to increase your labor efficiencies and also decrease a lot of wasted time trying to troubleshoot or figure things out. If you want to use that data to make decisions, knowledge is power and data comes first, and you got to have access to it. The more data you have, the better decisions you can make, whether it's on the labor and maintenance side or even the capital allocation side. Additionally, a term that's being used more and more is data democratization. How can we get every stakeholder to get the data they need and better understand it so that everyone now can make better decisions? Looking more at the facilities themselves, increased efficiency and extended resources. The more you can run your systems efficiently, the longer they're going to last, the least or the less resources you're going to use. And then that helps you now hit things like ESG goals, which more and more companies are beginning to implement, and even more governments are beginning to regulate. And then lastly, these last 3 at the bottom, really driven around cybersecurity, is reduced risk. You're going to reduce your downtime. You're going to increase your availability for the space. It's not being as widely, and Lewis is going to talk about this more, but the increase in cybersecurity and every time a building gets hit is not always being shared or reported, but it's happening more and more. And with that, a subset of those are being reported more and more. And so by adding these smart building technologies, you are reducing your risk. With reduced risk, then comes the ability to increase your tenant retention and even attract a particular kind of tenant if you're in the commercial real estate space, which then can really increase your NOI over time, particularly in a competitive environment where work from home is increasing increasing in commonality, how often we see it. And then lastly, it's decreasing your cyber risks overall. You have a better security posture and you have a reduced attack surface if you begin to add these smart building solutions and increasing your defense in depth. And that's really important. Before I dive into the smart building platform that we provide at KMC, we did want to ask a survey. And this survey is going to help us contextualize the rest of the rest of the webinar to make sure that we understand the audience fully. So that question is going to be, how many buildings do you have under management? So you should see something on your screen. Go ahead and fill out that question if you would. And one of the reasons that this is so helpful is because as we talk about smart buildings and how we deploy smart building solution, there is, I think, an economies of scale that can take place. And that's really helpful. And then how we talk about that, it's always a little different. So we'll leave this up for a few more seconds and then we'll move on. How many buildings do you have under management? The other thing that's interesting about this survey is, there's probably multiple types of audience members as well, whether you are a business owner or whether you are serving multiple customers as an OT system integrator or a managed service provider, that also can play a factor. And we're able to help people across the entire spectrum. A few more seconds. So as we get started talking about the smart building strategy, I would like to tell you a little bit about KMC Controls. KMC Controls has been in business for over 50 years. We're very, very proud of the fact that everything that we do from development and support to manufacturing, from the plastic components all the way through to the assembly of the parts and the PCB boards and all of that, that is all done here in the United States. And so we're growing an American company and supporting American jobs. And then we have over 150 North American system integrator partners to help deploy those solutions. That includes KMC Commander, which I'm about to show you, and the Veridify Dome solution. So wherever you are in North America, and then even with an additional 50 partners worldwide, we're able to help you deploy these solutions with partners that understand the building space, because we have that in-depth knowledge and network of partners. So we're very proud of that. And then lastly, our mission statement is to provide innovative and intuitive solutions from responsive and supportive people. And I like to bold those 4 words, because those 4 words are woven into every conversation we have and every meeting that we have internally, because we try to just stay very focused on making sure we're at the leading edge. And also we are supporting our customers and our channel as much as possible. When we talk about KMC Commander, it can be deployed for a single building, which is very common, and it could also be deployed across a portfolio of buildings, regardless of what building automation system is there. Very commonly, these are examples of the devices that KMC Controls produces, but very commonly you'll have something in your building that looks like this, whether it's actuators, sensors on the wall, controllers running your chillers, boilers, rooftop units, air handler units. All of those can communicate over what's called MSTP or IP networks. And what Commander does is we sit at the IP level, pulling all that data natively out of your BAS system, and then bringing that data securely to the cloud for visualization around scheduling, trends, alarms, and dashboards for multiple users, whether you are just an occupant in the office or you're a building engineer, building owner looking to have visibility into everything. And while KMC Controls manufactures these, we could also sit on top of nearly any system that's out there, because inside the building automation system, as many of you know, industry, as many of you know, there is a standardization around protocols like BACnet and Modbus largely. There's others out there. And Commander can communicate to those through those open protocols. And so far to date, we've incorporated and integrated over 130 different brands natively into the Commander platform. So that means if you have multiple buildings, one with KMC, one with Siemens, one with Johnson, one with a carrier system, a train system, all of those can be wrapped up and standardized inside of our platform. Commander's been trusted by a number of top companies and organizations, including people like Chick-fil-A, Sainsbury, H&M, and Chicago Public Schools. From a visualization standpoint, we've tried to make it simple and something that can natively sit on top of any system. So with that, we've tried to normalize and make consistency easy for visualization with a number of different components, whether it's a gauge or a trend or a simple image, or being able to embed something like a PDF or a 3D floor plan. We've made it easy to use on mobile. And then also, depending on use cases or the type of vertical that you're in, whether it's schools or retail, or again, those different users and stakeholders within a single organization, you could have multiple dashboards for each of them. We've also done some work in the solar field space, allowing us to get remote visibility into the production of those solar fields, again, just using these open protocols that are standard in the market. This is a very high-level overview, and it's intended to be. I would encourage you to go do some additional research on our YouTube channel. We have an entire playlist dedicated to KMC Commander, and we would love to share that information with you. You can see it live. You can see the demos. You can see how it works and how easy it is to build out these dashboards and visualizations. And YouTube's an excellent resource we've poured a lot of time into. Now, not only can we get data out of your building, we could bring it to the cloud. We could also now partner with other prop tech companies in the space and other solutions to make sure that you get the exact smart building solution that you need. This includes Veridify, which we'll be spending the bulk of our time on, but it also looks at companies like Google for single sign-on, Coppertree and Brainbox for analytics, Rhombus Systems and other cloud-based security camera companies to bring in those live feeds into our dashboard. All that to say, we have an API-first platform that is ready to help you build the exact solution that you need and the partners in place to make it happen. All right, now as we transition over to cybersecurity, I would like to bring up another survey. And this survey is asking specifically, what is your understanding of the cybersecurity threat against buildings? It's a very, very basic, low, medium, or high. Just from what you understand and what you know, how would you rate your understanding of the cybersecurity threats against buildings? The good news is that wherever you land on this spectrum, we're going to be giving you some additional context today, and we're excited to do so. But it's always good to get a baseline and get a good understanding of where everyone fits. So we'll leave this up for a few seconds. So again, if you've looked away for a moment, we're currently doing a survey around what is your understanding of the cybersecurity threats against buildings. You feel comfortable with it? You have a high understanding, perhaps even maybe it's happened to you or another company you know or a partner you know. Perhaps you have a moderate understanding with just kind of whispers out there, and maybe you haven't been terribly exposed to what those cybersecurity threats are. And also, I just want to say thank you for everyone that's participating. That's really, really special and very, very helpful. Okay, I'm going to give a very high-level overview now before we turn it over to Lewis and Veridify about what the realities are of cybersecurity in smart buildings. A lot of times, IT is involved, highly involved. They already have their policies, their processes, their user management. Perhaps they have firewalls, right? Very, very common. And they have monitoring tools as well. The thing about that is that those IT systems often cannot or do not look into the OT systems at all. They don't understand them. They're different. They communicate differently. While there may be some IP communication in the system, and certainly IP systems are growing, what they're seeing, they don't necessarily understand. It's not the same as an IT system or a computer or a switch or a firewall. It's very, very different. And those existing OT systems do inherit some protection from those IT policies. But again, largely those IT systems and even the IT staff does not know or understand what OT, and again, OT is operational technology. So we're looking at HVAC, lighting, elevators, fire. They don't have an understanding. OT systems, as I mentioned earlier around BACnet and Modbus, typically speak these open protocols. And those open protocols are typically and largely completely unmanaged and open. So I can go and I can connect into those systems and I can see what's there. I could view it. I could even communicate with those devices, and those devices are going to listen. That is a feature that has been built into those protocols like BACnet and Modbus. And so with that openness, naturally, as cybersecurity increases, now comes a huge attack surface and concern that is emerging and becoming more and more vulnerable and more accessed and leveraged. OT systems are not protected in depth at the protocol and device level like you would typically see from an IT system or even a computer. And so with that, there's no solution to protect these existing systems. Perhaps new systems and some newer technologies that are coming out in the next couple of years with a rip and replace strategy will be able to do that. But from a retrofit standpoint, there's really nothing out there. And that is one of the reasons that we are so excited to give this presentation today and show you how you could use KMC Smart Building Solutions and Veridify Solutions together to now retrofit your solution and your building to add protection. And so with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Lewis.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for the great intro, and Steve for bringing us into it. I'm going to step through probably a very detailed area in a very lively fashion so we can have some interaction at the end of today's webinar, and dive deeper for the audience here. Just quickly, as a quick introduction for some of you who may or may not be familiar with us, the Veridify Security as a company is focused on securing very, very small, low processor type devices at the edge of the IoT. And very, very specifically, have been working with our partners, KMC Controls, Intel, and Arrow Electronics, specifically in developing Dome for the building automation space that we're going to talk about in detail in a few minutes. Everything that we typically do is software, so our tools prior to being applied into building automation platforms are all managed by our engineers. So we bring a lot of flexibility and ease of application. And again, we've been very, very focused through our partnerships with companies like KMC Controls and Arrow to bring our solutions to market. And I think for today, that's a good introduction. So as Tim gave you an introduction at the very end of his deck, it's an area that we become all too familiar with, and that is that buildings have become a significant target for cyber attacks and hackers. And we see it in the headlines today across a wide range of types of buildings, from hospitals and boards, school boards, to commercial facilities. And probably many of you are on today's call because you realize that the attack is one thing, it makes for a good news story, but more importantly, if you're involved, the costs can be substantial. This could be, again, if you're a system integrator for your customers or clients, we saw a pretty good distribution of building representation in the first polling question. So given that Honeywell reported last summer in a survey that 27% of facility managers have reported some type of cyber breach, if you're either managing a building or working as a system integrator, you're very, very likely to come across this solution. So I think maybe before we dive into what we as a group of vendors are doing to address this, it might be worthwhile looking at why we have this problem or why we still have the problem, because again, it's no big surprise to anybody on today's webinar. Cybersecurity is an issue, attacks are an issue. Why aren't they fixed? I think it can be shown at a high level in 3 very quick slides. What I have here is a typical IT networks. Most of you are probably familiar with IT networks. They're the systems that run our payrolls, our sales systems, maybe our phone systems, etc. You might have an IT staff, you might have it outsourced somewhere. And for decades, we've been developing great tools to try to protect that accounting system or that payroll system, things like firewalls and VPNs and malware and network segmentation, and on the list goes. So fairly mature industry, fairly protected. If we then take a look at the OT networks, OT or operational technology networks, and many of you be familiar again in working in it, what you see here are the networks that manage the building platforms, the actuators, the sensors, the devices at the edge of the network. Most people hadn't really thought about cybersecurity here. Why? Because even though the term smart building is somewhat recent, many of you on this webinar probably know that for decades, networks have been involved in managing buildings, going back to a variety of proprietary protocols and BACnet, MSTP, pre-IP network type protocols to today's solutions. So you now have a platform with very, very minimal protection. There's some monitoring, and even today's cybersecurity tools, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, do provide monitoring. So they may tell you something's happened. They may even have something called anomaly detection. Is there a bad person or a bad entity on your network in your building you need to know about? And there are very, very few tools to provide protection. Network segmentation or trying to isolate an area may be one of the few things available. The bottom line, OT networks, OT security technology is 20 plus years behind where IT networks are today. And why does that mean anything to us? Well, very, very simply, it's important because, as Tim described, as we're getting to intelligent and smart buildings, what makes them so is we're connecting these networks, the IT and the IoT, to the OT for better building management, whether it's energy resources, access controls, et cetera, et cetera. And what this is doing with that open door on the back end of the OT networks is increasing the cyber attack surface, plain and simple. And I think it's probably worthwhile to, before we look at a solution, to just look at 3 slides to drill a little deeper, since I know some of you are already familiar at a high level with this area. So what I have here is a typical schematic representation of, excuse me, a building system where you may have already some form of internet access to the building management system for the purposes of picking up data logs or providing a dashboard, perhaps energy management. Within the network, you may have the IT systems connected again to the OT network. And you may have an OT workstation, perhaps a building management system, and OT controllers talking to devices, thermostats, AVs, air handlers, etc. throughout the building. Very, very typical implementation, regardless of what the protocol is, BACnet, Modbus, KNX, etc. In this particular slide, it shows you what are your exposures. And these are not all the exposures. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but for the purposes of today's discussion, we wanted to put some on the schematic. So you have everything from, and these are the ones that are the favorites for the front page news reports, somebody coming in over the internet and taking down a hospital or taking down a school board office at the top. So internet access is an issue. And even though you may have a password or what have you, I think we all recognize in today's world, a lot of these access systems are easily defeated. Within the system, we've often seen, and there was a municipality in Florida where employees accessed through the IT network because they had access to the OT system to influence the municipality water system. So again, if you look on to the right, access through the IT network can be an exposure. And then physically in the building, one can't forget that in certain situations, whether it's on a campus or a large building, getting into the building and getting access to the OT network may be all you need. As Tim described earlier, most of these protocols run open. We put up typically a Wireshark screen. And for those of you who don't know, I think we're going to quickly flash up a screen later to show you what traffic looks like. Everybody can see the traffic. And finally, the devices themselves in the room. There's very little to prevent somebody from entering a conference room, an unused conference room, or an area in a building, taking a device off the wall, taking that cable connection, and now plugging themselves in and having access to the network. Because again, in many of these installations, as those of you who do them know, many of these devices are set up to talk to each other. So these are the security exposures and situations that are out there virtually in almost all of the buildings. And again, as a reminder, you may have a network monitoring technology you've employed to see if there's somebody bad on your network, but it is not stopping the attack itself. It may require intervention by an IT staff or IT contractor that you may or may not have readily available. So what we have done, and I'm going to just in a very quick few slides describe Dome to you, is Dome is a device management platform that was developed in conjunction in the early days with our partners Intel and AWS, and with our partners KMC Controls and Arrow, has been now adapted to the building automation space. And there are three primary components to Dome for today's discussion. There are more, but to show you what we do in terms of applying security, we have a cloud component called the Dome server, where we can manage the services in the building and give you easy access regardless of where your building is. We have something called the Dome interface appliance, which runs on the KMC Commander. That's the very powerful IoT platform that Tim described at the very end. You see it in the bottom left side here that would sit inside a building or a campus. And then we have something called the Dome Sentry. This is a standalone device, so we can retrofit security to a pre-existing building. The solution we're talking about today could be installed today or tomorrow in your building or one of your customers' buildings and immediately stop cyber attacks to those devices there. So it's a very, very simple three-component installation that's designed to overlay security. And basically what we're doing, we're not replacing anything that exists in a building today. This is technology similar to a VPN, where we're going to run over your BACnet or BACnet IP network, creating a tunnel and then encrypting the data and authenticating all of the communications inside the building from device to device. I'm going to say one more word on this when we get to the sentries later and talk a little bit more at a detail level. But again, what I want to emphasize is with the application of these three components, you've now locked down the building network as it exists today and created a very NIST compliant, US government compliant framework for protecting all of the devices. The solution itself, and we won't go into too much of it today, is available through our partners Arrow, and Roland will talk a little bit later in terms of access and what they're doing to make this readily available. So again, this has been packaged for system integrators and for building owners. to minimize the cost of implementation, interruption to the building. It can be applied to an existing building, and make it easy for somebody who is very familiar with building systems and maybe not so familiar with cybersecurity to implement it. It's all been scripted to be easily implemented. Once implemented, we provide a range of tools, including dashboards that allow you to see what's happening in the building, know your devices are good and being protected, know where there are issues, and even the issues that we've stopped. So again, we are stopping attacks when they happen and then alerting you to it, which I think is important. I want to make one note. You'll see a blue bar at the bottom of this slide. Many very good solutions today require connectivity to the cloud, which is important and good. Our solution is designed to work with or without cloud connectivity. And this is important if you have DoD customers or government, federal buildings or others where they will not allow their buildings to be connected to the cloud. So we can actually operate in an environment like that too. So a very, very versatile solution that we've developed. I wanted to say one more word about the security at a very detailed level for this audience before handing over the microphone. Dome Sentry is a small hardware device that can be applied in a building, one or more devices, shown here on the right-hand side in the panel of a 32-story commercial building in Manhattan, where we have a system implemented. And just a couple of characteristics about it I think that are important. First and foremost, zero trust. What that simply means is that every communication, every data packet coming to a device and telling it to open a door, turn up or down the temperature, is authenticated and protected. We don't just assume that because you opened the door with a key once, that everything going through the door is now authentic. So everything is using a zero trust model. As I mentioned earlier, auto configure, we wanted to make it easy for putting in very strong security and all the things. If any of you have done it, you know there can be a lot of pieces and moving parts. We've tried to make it easy. And finally, centralized control. We've put a lot of intelligence into these edge boxes so that not only can we do things like let web services, logging traffic through, but make sure we screen all backnet commands as an example. But we've also done things like whitelisting. Should the thermostat be able to talk to an access control on the 32nd floor to a conference room? Maybe not. So we know what devices can talk to what devices. And again, for you and your customers, providing detailed information. So in just wrapping up, what we've now done, going back to that diagram with Dome in place, is we've credentialed all of these elements. So an actor, bad actor, coming in over the internet without the right credentials cannot access either the OT network or the OT devices. And again, entering from any component here, and we're happy to demonstrate at a later time with our partners how we do this, the ability to protect all of these solutions by Dome. So we've actually addressed them. Very, very briefly, we've protected against the 4 areas described here: the bad actor gaining access, another computer on the network being compromised, on-premise access. And this is very critical because in a large environment, on-premise access is a very critical thing. And I think actually, in even showing the OT devices, I have one technical slide as a wrap-up here as we come to the end, which is a picture of Wireshark. Some of you on this call may be familiar. Wireshark, very simply, is a software program that lets you look at the actual digital traffic on a network. And in the background screen, we have a typical backnet snapshot. Any of you work in the area would be familiar with it, showing where traffic is coming from, where it's going to, and that it's backnet. And you can see all the packets on the network. And in fact, if you open one, you can see the commands. So not only can a hacker gather critical information on your building, but they know the format and structure and where to send the commands to attack a building. On the right-hand side is a screenshot after Dome has been installed. And what you're going to see is all of the usable information goes away to an unauthorized user. All you see is security payload. And if I look down at the commands, they're all now wrapped in a encrypted package with a signature, so there's no usable information on the network. And again, as a contrast, because there are other good tools out there, we don't replace them, but we proactively provide real-time security at the device level. We're designed to protect to the edge. That's our background, is small devices. So we go below the BMS, below the controllers to the edge of a building network. Everything is based on zero trust. And I want to point out, again, if we have audience members on the East Coast, BACnet MSTP is still a very popular non-IP protocol. Our technologies can run on non-IP systems, twisted pair 485. It's important. Many of the solutions on the right today are very, very good, but they're monitoring. They're telling you that you may have a problem. By the way, the problem may just be a vendor on the 27th floor putting in a system that wasn't scheduled or known about. So you're getting anomalies on the network you haven't seen before, but it's not an attacker. So you will need to figure that out. It will identify devices for you, as we do for the purposes of protection, and will give you alerts. So again, very important to have monitoring. You want to know what type of things are connected to your network, but you will still then need to go and deal with them. So just wrapping up, we think we bring some interesting and very powerful benefits to people who own buildings in terms of protecting them to the edge, your assets and your tenants. We do believe that a cyber safe building adds value to it, similar to how LEED adds value in the energy space and documented. We think it provides a competitive advantage if you're in a downtown or urban setting and your building is cyber safe and the leasing building next door is not. You will be asking a potential tenant where they want to put their employees. Many of the people we're working with are approaching their insurance companies now. Cybersecurity insurance is an exploding area and actually promoting for reductions now in that area. And finally, again, as we pointed out, we have a solution that we're marketing here today and explaining to you that can be retrofitted to an operating building. It does not need to replace a system. It works on a wide range of systems. I will share with you the first system we installed with our partners, KMC Controls, was not a KMC managed system, but was rather another third-party system, and it was a great exercise. And again, these systems are typically installed with the building running. And if you're a system integrator on the solution on the call today, in a wrap up, I just want to say that again, it will give you the ability to deliver a cybersecurity solution that we know a lot of people are asking about, giving the headlines in the papers as we discussed at the beginning of our call. You can go to an existing customer. Again, you're not replacing what's there. So if you've just put a system in, you can go back and now provide security on that system for the additional revenue base. By the way, you can go to new customers, as I already just described with KMC. Our first system was a non-KMC system. You can go across the street to the system you didn't get to install and perhaps win a customer. And again, we've automated a lot of the components here to make it fast and easy for you to install. So you can get to revenue both from the sale of the solution and from the SaaS component that we deliver. That is it for me. And I think actually, having given this very quick high-level overview, we're going to go to our third polling question today. I'm just going to quickly provide it. I think if it's going to be displayed, and they're going to send out the survey question. And the survey question is, now having seen this solution and discussing what we've done, if how you would rate your understanding of the space and what we do now from low, medium, and high. And I don't know, we'll give a few seconds for this to go through and people to answer if hopefully we've helped the understanding. And I am actually, and I think for the sake of time, we'll go to sending out the answers here. But basically, I can share with you what I'm seeing is where we had a somewhat even distribution of low, medium, and high, with most in the medium range. I'm happy to say that it looks like the level of concern and understanding now has increased significantly. We're at 50%, almost double the numbers are in the high, another 40% in the medium, and less than 10% now in the low, up from 20 to 28%. So very happy that so far we've given you that understanding. And I'm going to turn over the presentation now to Roland from Aero Electronics, who can talk a little bit more about how we're bringing this solution to market.
Thank you, Louis. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I also wanted to extend my thanks to you all for attending today's webinar. Also, thank you to Tim, Louis, and Steve and our teams that made this webinar possible. You know, as you heard today, there are available options and technology to make your intelligent buildings and your projects safe, secure, and scalable. My name is Roland Ducote, and I'm a sales director within the Aero Intelligence Solutions team. My team is focused in really two areas. One is working with our ecosystem partners on enabling market-ready solutions, and second, we work with our systems integrators as they deploy these solutions. In just a few short minutes, I'll provide a short introduction to Arrow, how we support this solution through systems integrators, our partner program, along with a services example of that program. If you're not familiar with Arrow, here are some high-level data points. As you can see, Arrow supports a wide variety of organizations for both product and project deployment. All over the world, we help engineers, visionaries, and designers within these organizations, and we have an incredible team and diverse ecosystem that helps support this diverse set of customers. As for today's content, let me first speak on how we fit into OT and IT markets, as both Tim and Lewis had made their own ideas known. As the importance of data and control at the edge increases, the need to integrate with the enterprise is also increased. Factors specifically in facility management, like cost control, changing workforce, competition, changes to market drivers, really all increase the need for innovation. But many businesses aren't ready or able to divest from existing tools and systems, like existing DASs. Therefore, some of the old must work with the new, and the new devices and things must complement critical systems that remain. And I think our teams did a really good job today of explaining that. The emergence of edge computing didn't really create data in commercial buildings. I think we all know that, but it has made real-time visibility and control of those tools possible. That shift, along with other pressures on business, has increased the value of the operational data to the enterprise side of the business, which means that today, information technology and operational technology segments of these organizations find themselves working side by side more frequently. There are key differences here that Tim mentioned early on. Most importantly, as Tim and Lewis both alluded to, these are completely different networks. Lewis did a great job on this topic. But when it comes to deployment of operational technology solutions that are meant to last 5 or more years, it's very different as well from an IT perspective that generally has a short life cycle. So in what you'll see in the slide is that service providers in these two areas need different service organizations to support them, depending on if they're on the operational technology or on the IT side. So let me speak to how we orchestrate these solutions for systems integrators. Solution orchestration, in our view, revolves around meeting the objectives and creating the outcome for the end customers. That can involve understanding how products, development, deployment, and services flow into a project to create outcomes, to create those outcomes and experiences. For example, systems integrators we work with have extensive services within their own organization, but gaps still exist. So whether that be third-party software integration to sensors and gateway installation, or just general L1 support. So those are all areas the Arrow Intelligent Solutions team focuses on in terms of support, really to fill those skill gaps with services to help support operational technology partners, systems integrators, or software vendors as they're trying to get their product through to opportunity. So let's see what that looks like in practice. So in our ecosystem, everyone has a role to play. So in our ecosystem value chain, that operational technology partner really owns the end user relationship. They're the vertical subject matter expert. At Arrow, we don't want to own or build the end customer application, but we do want to know what it is. The Arrow Intelligent Solutions team, along with other Arrow businesses, and strategic alliance partners like KMC and Veridify, bring a number of these market-ready solutions together for partners and for their customers. These offers are generally focused on specific use cases, as you heard today, and have come from partnering with different product, technology, and services organizations to bring them to really a market-ready condition. As with this solution with KMC and Veridify, there's almost always a requirement for last-mile integration, customization with these offers, so there's always room for intellectual property and value through to the end user. So really quick, what does our program look like as we engage with systems integrators? So we aim to deliver on value that grows and scales the business of our SIs. We do that with resources, discovery sessions, co-creation, and scale models. We ask for resources and participation in different programs, as well as support for performance metrics. But let me provide you one example of a service that we provide through to systems integrators for end users. So as an example, I thought financing options would be a good topic for this audience. End users across multiple applications, purchasing solutions, were asked in a survey we did if the availability, so just the availability of leasing and financing options, impacted their choice of vendor. And that question was posed both to end users as well as the folks that we work with in the channel. And an overwhelming majority, so 2/3 of end users and over 2/3 of our channel partners and systems integrators said that it was a positive impact in their choice of suppliers. So with this type of service, it's really meant to reduce friction and how organizations sell a solution and how a customer wants to purchase. The Aero Capital Solutions team has a robust suite of financial options, as you can see. And as you can see, they're really built to help support an organization scale. So last slide. In closing, I first want to say that I'm fortunate to work within this ecosystem. Organizations like KMC and Veridify bring a wealth of talent and are ecosystem focused, which is to say they realize that these solutions often require multiple skill sets and are very focused on working within the ecosystem. Our role as Aero Intelligent Solutions is to bring together those tailored solutions through systems integrators. We abstract the complexity of purchasing and deploying technology, and it's our services and support that provide value to the entire ecosystem. We work with partners, as I mentioned, with KMC and Veridify, for end users and systems integrators of different shapes and sizes to service these solutions and deliver different applications. So large complex organizations can scope perfect fit solutions, smaller organizations can use things off the shelf. And so there's a wide variety of ways that we can get started. So how do you get started? First, if you're new to this and you would like a more in-depth demonstration, please reach out to us and we can get you started. Second, Lewis highlighted the starter kit, which is available, and we'd love to get started with you. So please reach out to us and we'll get you set up. So thank you, everyone, and back to you, Steve.
Very good, very good. Roland, that was a great follow-up here, and everything that we've talked about today has certainly generated some interest. And let me go ahead and throw out this first question. It comes from a consultant, and he is wondering, can an internal bad actor corrupt or reverse the DOME system that is designed to detect threats? And also he has concerns about insider threats as an additional possible breach in his business. Open the floor to anyone who wants to tackle that.
Sounds like a DOME question. Very, very quick response is no. You can't corrupt. As a matter of fact, one form of attack could be corrupted commands. They'll be blocked. They'll be reported to the KMC commander in a log and show where they are, and then the user can decide what, if any, other action they want to take, assuming it's a one-time threat. This was also in today's call. I'll keep it limited, but we just had this recently tested at a significant public school system where they hired a third-party group to actually attack the system, and the conclusions were there was no ability to attack our NIST-based frameworks from outside. They suggested there could be a physical component inside and determined that that couldn't be done also. And we can certainly provide more information at a later point in time. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Another attendee asked, are there standards for interoperability to make all the smart capabilities easier to integrate? He adds that ideally plug and play like USB, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth. And how much would this simplify integration and lower install costs?
I'll speak briefly to that. So the standards for interoperability are those open protocols that are in the marketplace, the BACnet, Modbus, SNMP. Many vendors worth their salt have invested in those protocols, understanding that that is just simply how buildings integrate. Existing building automation systems like Niagara, for instance, also have a huge number of drivers that help standardize those interoperability, those integrations. Anytime you hear plug and play in the building space, it's a very difficult thing because these are highly tuned and engineered solutions. Some are less highly tuned, but particularly for larger buildings that would be using a BACnet IP system, those are highly engineered, and so plug and play can become difficult. But again, with the open protocols, that makes it easier. And then how much would this simplification or simplify integration and lower install costs? On the tail end or the other end of that would be APIs. And so what we've found is many times integrating other prop tech companies that we've already integrated with before is really just a matter of a couple clicks of a button and data begins to flow. And so that is increasing in simplification. And more companies are also realizing, we need to have fully supported and documented APIs if we're going to have an opportunity at all in the retrofit or bid spec market. So those are the ways that those are working. Plug and play is a dream that everyone is working towards, and hopefully someday, within several decades, we will get there.
Very good. This is a simple question, but I found the nuance sort of fascinating. And this gentleman would like to know, what's the difference between cybersecurity threats against a building and cybersecurity threats as a whole?
I can give you my quick thoughts on it. Cybersecurity threats as a whole really take a lot of different forms. They could be phishing. Oftentimes we think ransomware, where I'm going to lock down your systems by encrypting your data and not giving it back to you until I get the appropriate Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that the universe is significantly large when you say cybersecurity. When you say against buildings, and in today's discussion, we kept it focused to OT networks and the networks that run buildings. And again, even if your building isn't smart, it's running on a network, it's now susceptible. And the threats here, in some cases, can take similar form. Again, denying you access to thermostats in the middle of the summer in New York may make your building unoccupiable and worthy of a ransom. There are other safety issues in addition. So you're going to see physical threats. Think Colonial Pipeline. The fact that a threat against the IT system caused the physical shutdown of the pipeline. So again, those threats tend to manifest themselves at the endpoint more in a physical outcome that, again, a building owner or occupants likely don't want to see. I think is a simple definition that would work for today.
Yeah, Stephen, I'd want to highlight that what Lewis had mentioned there, where from a IT perspective, like it's painful, but not a huge deal when your computer, your PC goes down or you don't have access to email. But if your operational technology network is hit, there's significant business impact there. So I think that is the key difference in terms of those types of threats and really what the impact is between the two types of networks.
And I think that's a huge differentiator that maybe most folks that are not involved in security and risk in a building setting really wouldn't recognize. So thanks for that answer. So the next question, at a high level, how is our data protected with this solution? And how and where and where, when and where is it encrypted?
If you're talking about within the building itself, so again, we're using NIST protocols. In my opening slide, I mentioned future-proof. So there are some new protocols coming out because the current tools that are being used will not protect you against future attacks. If the word post-quantum or quantum computers have been in some of your readings. But in today's world, again, we're using NIST-compliant platforms, so everything can be certified. So that's how it's happening. The encryption is actually happening at the edge, at the devices, which is important so that there's no gaps or openings. So it's happening within the building, in between the endpoints, whether they're embedded in the device you're getting or whether they're running on a dome Sentry. And in terms of data is being stored and protected either on the Commander, KMC Commander within the building, or securely transmitted to the cloud, either to our partners, AWS, our new partners, Azure, or what have you, through a set of fairly standard tools. And for those of you in the security space, recognizing terms like TLS, et cetera, in standard more powerful protocols that can run on big controllers, but you can't fit on the small devices at the edge of the building, which is why we distinguish between the two, but use all those tools to protect you edge to edge.
Okay, so, segueing off that question then, the question asks, how many Dome Sentry devices are needed in a building or a floor on a building for a building retrofit situation?
Great question. And the answer is it varies. So the Dome Sentry, in an ideal world, will protect the device behind it, one-to-one. And if you do have an issue, you can then isolate that device away from the balance of the building and have the building continue to operate. But you can also put more than one device behind a Dome Sentry. We know daisy chaining and other technologies are very, very popular in buildings. So you can put multiple devices. You could have a Dome device per floor. So you could have 10 devices in a 10-story building covering the entire building. It's really the system integrator's decision and level of security you want to have applied, and the level of control, device level control you want to exert over your network. But you can start with a starter kit, as we put together with KMC and Arrow, to put the backbone of a system in, and then grow it as you see the need or learn the understanding of the threats to the other edge components in your building.
All right, well, we've got time for one question, and this gentleman hits right to the heart of the matter. And obviously his question is going to depend on the scale of the deployment, but he wants to know, how is Dome priced?
I think all three of us could answer that one. I'll chime in quickly. I'll go Roland, maybe the more appropriate. So we put together this starter kit. So basically you can put the foundation of an entire building in at, I believe, just over $5,000 list price, total capital cost starting, and then grow it from there, adding additional sentries. Devices later will come embedded with Dome clients, so there'll be no need to invest further. And then there's a SaaS monitoring component that can start off as little as just over $100 a month and up, for actually monitoring and providing all of this valuable data for managing your system. So to Steve's point, really a function of surveying the building. We have tools for that. KMC can help you with that. Arrow can help you with that.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we have reached that time in the event where we are going to have to say goodbye. And I want to thank everybody who attended to today's program. We had a really great crowd. We had an engaged crowd that was here to the end. So thank you for that. And thank you for participating on the questions. And obviously, I want to thank our speakers today for this compelling presentation, Tim Vogel, Lewis Parks, and Roland Decote, for sharing their insights on this important subject. And of course, our sponsors, Arrow Intelligent Solutions, KMC Controls, and Veridify Security.